The Galactic Cartography Consortium's central hall was a marvel of alien architecture. A massive spherical chamber where holographic star charts shimmered like captured galaxies. Kira Jung stood at the periphery of the room, her dark eyes tracing the intricate lines of known space, her fingers absently running along the edge of her newly issued datavat. Most junior cartographers would be overwhelmed by the sheer magnificence of the space. Sprawling holographic displays stretched from floor to ceiling, representing millennia of galactic exploration. Star systems danced in miniature, color-coded by civilization. Trade routes glowing like luminescent veins connecting distant worlds. But Kira saw something else, something that made the back of her neck prickle with an inexplicable sense of wrongness. The map of known space was perfect, too perfect. At the eastern quadrant, where human-controlled space began, the star charts displayed an impossible boundary. Not a gradual fade, not the usual notation of unexplored regions that cartographers used when data was incomplete. This was different. A razor-sharp line that cut through the holographic display like a wound in reality itself. Something caught your eye, Zhang. The voice belonged to Administrator Excel Naga, a veteran correction cartographer with skin the color of weathered steel and eyes that had mapped more star systems than most species had planets. He approached silently, his three-fingered hand resting on a console that controlled the massive holographic display. Kira hesitated. Something in her gut told her that her next words would matter. "The border," she said carefully. "It's not like any cartographic boundary I've ever seen." Selnaga's reaction was instantaneous and unexpected. The veteran's skin shifted from steel gray to a sickly pale green. His upper set of eyes, corrections had four, suddenly seemed to look everywhere except at the holographic map. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice a pitch higher than moments before. "It's a perfect line," Kira explained, zooming the display with a gesture. "Most galactic borders have gradients. Zones of contested space, exploration markers, fade zones. But here," she traced the line with her finger. "It's like someone took a ruler and cut space itself." The administrator's coffee mug slipped from his hand, shattering on the polished floor. The sound echoed through the otherwise silent cartography hall, causing several other workers to glance their way. "Some things," Selnaga whispered, bending to collect the broken ceramic pieces, "are better left unexamined." But Kira Jung was not someone who accepted such convenient dismissals. Her family had survived the Proxima Colony massacre, had rebuilt from nothing. Accepting surface-level explanations was not in her genetic code. "Why?" she pressed. "Why is this border so different?" Selnaga straightened, and for a moment, Kira saw something in his eyes she never expected to see in a seasoned cartographer. Pure, unadulterated fear. "Your security clearance is new," he said finally. "You don't understand the complications." "Then help me understand," Kira challenged. The administrator glanced around the hall, ensuring no one was listening too closely. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "The border isn't a boundary. It's a asterisk warning asterisk." Before Kira could press further, Selnaga turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the massive hall. The holographic map continued to spin, that impossible line mocking her with its perfect, impossible geometry. Her first day as a junior cartographer, and already she knew her life would never be the same. Something waited beyond that line. Something that made even the most experienced galactic explorers afraid to look too closely. And Kira Jung was going to find out what it was. The Galactic Archives were not a place for the faint of heart. Located in the neutral zone between the Trilaxian Confederacy and the Quantum Collaborative, the archives were a labyrinth of compressed data crystals, quantum storage units, and information so classified that merely accessing certain sections could trigger diplomatic incidents. Kira Jung had spent the last 3 standard weeks cultivating contacts, trading favors, and working her security clearance to its absolute limits. Her initial encounter with Administrator Excel Naga had become an obsession. That impossible border haunted her dreams, transforming star charts into razor-sharp lines that cut through her subconscious. The Archive's central processing hub was a marvel of technological integration. Holographic interfaces danced around data processors that looked more like living organisms than machines. Biological computing had long since replaced traditional silicon-based systems, and here, information seemed to breathe and pulse with its own life. "You're pushing dangerous boundaries," a soft voice interrupted her research. Turning, Kira found herself face to face with Area Velox, a data broker notorious for finding information that was supposed to remain hidden. Aria's cybernetic augmentations were subtle, just enough to give her an edge in the information trade, but not so much that she looked inhuman. "I'm just doing my job," Kira replied, her fingers never stopping their dance across the holographic interface. Aria leaned in, her augmented eyes scanning the fragments of data Kira had managed to uncover. "Those expedition logs," she whispered, "they're not just classified. They're sanitized asterisk." The logs Kira had found were maddeningly incomplete. Exploratory missions that approached the human border between 2347 and 2389 showed increasingly bizarre patterns. The first few reports were standard, routine navigation, standard survey protocols. But as the missions progressed, something changed. A log from the stellar Pathfinder 7 expedition caught Kira's attention. Standard navigation report, except for a single annotated footnote that made no sense. Observation Note 427 Gamma. Navigation systems experiencing quantum destabilization. Compass vectors point simultaneously in all and no directions. Recommend immediate. The next page was completely blank. "Someone went to a lot of trouble to hide something," Aria muttered, her augmented vision scanning deeper layers of the document. Another log, this time from the Horizon 9 mission, contained even more disturbing information. The transmission was fragmented, but readable. Captain's log, supplemental. Something is watching. Not scanning. Not analyzing. Watching. Our sensors detect nothing, but the crew feels. Tiranization to grade ET. Recommend immediate return to. Kira's hands were shaking. These weren't just redacted documents. They were carefully constructed warnings. "Who does this?" she muttered. Aria's response was chilling. "Humans. Always humans." The data broker produced a data crystal, old technology, virtually obsolete, but impossible to hack or falsify. "This might interest you," she said, sliding it across the table. "Found it in the deep archives. Nobody was supposed to know it existed." As Kira inserted the crystal into her reader, Aria leaned close. "Some mysteries are better left unsolved. The border isn't just a line. It's a asterisk warning asterisk." The crystal began to play. A transmission, barely coherent, filled with static and something else. Something that sounded almost like singing. Just before the transmission cut out, a single phrase became clear. "They're watching, and they're waiting." Outside the archive's windows, the stars seemed to shift. Just for a moment. Just enough to make Kira wonder if she had seen anything at all. Her investigation had only just begun. The Ken of Diplomacy Museum was a mausoleum of failed relationships and forgotten histories. Located on the neutral moon of Harmony 9, it housed the last remnants of civilizations, long extinct diplomatic artifacts that told stories of conflicts and compromises across millennia. Kira Zhang stood before a massive stasis chamber that housed the last known Trilaxian diplomatic elder. The being inside looked more like a fossil than a living creature, its exoskeleton fractured, bioluminescent markings faded to near invisibility. Diplomatic records showed this elder had negotiated first contact protocols for over 7 centuries, witnessing more galactic conflicts than any living being. "Visitor identification required," a soft AI voice interrupted. "Kira Zhang, Galactic Cartography Consortium, Research Division," she responded, presenting her credentials. The stasis chamber's protective field shimmered. Most visitors came to observe, to marvel at the historical significance. Kira came with questions that had been burning inside her for weeks. Diplomatic protocol dictated that stasis-preserved diplomats could only be approached under specific circumstances. But Kira had spent weeks navigating bureaucratic labyrinths, trading favors, and pulling every string she could find. Her obsession with the human border had transformed her from a junior cartographer into something else entirely, a hunter of impossible truths. The Elder's primary eyes flickered open, 3 of the 4, at least. Trilaxian biology was complex, with redundant systems that allowed survival under extreme conditions. This one had survived multiple galactic conflicts, diplomatic crises, and the slow decay of its own civilization. "You should not be here," the diplomat whispered, its voice a combination of subsonic vibrations and translated speech. Kira leaned closer. "I need to know about the human border. About why every galactic map ends exactly where human space begins." A sound emerged from the diplomat, something between a laugh and a death rattle. "Not a border," it whispered. "A * membrane *. The stasis chamber's environmental controls began to fluctuate. Alarms would sound soon, but Kira knew this might be her only chance. "Tell me," she pressed. The diplomat's bioluminescent markings began to pulse, an old Trilaxian method of communicating multiple layers of meaning simultaneously. "Humans don't explore the galaxy," the being said, each word carefully chosen. "They curate it. There are things beyond that border that should never be seen, never be known." Fragments of memory began to leak from the diplomat's failing neural networks. Kira's translation device struggled to keep up. Fragmented images of expeditions, vessels returning with crews driven mad, star systems that simply disappeared, not destroyed, not conquered, simply removed from existence. "In the first century of galactic exploration," the diplomat continued, "we thought humans were simply another species, aggressive, innovative, adaptable." A wet, choking laugh. "We were wrong. The chamber's environmental systems were failing. The diplomat was dying, and it knew it. "They are not explorers," the being whispered, its voice dropping to almost nothing. "They are guardians and what they guard is not something any civilization should ever discover." Kira leaned closer, her breath catching. "What are they guarding?" But the diplomat's eyes had already gone dark. The bioluminescent markings faded. The last of the great Trilaxian diplomatic corps was gone, taking its secrets with it. As museum security rushed in, Kira realized she had more questions than ever. The border was not just a line on a map. It was a warning, a containment zone, and humanity was its architect. Just before she was escorted out, Kira noticed something strange. A data crystal, no larger than her thumbnail, had fallen from the diplomat's withered appendage. Somehow, in the chaos, she managed to slip it into her pocket. Whatever secrets it contained would change everything. The research facility was a marvel of impossible engineering, nestled in the quantum-stabilized caverns of Nexus 7, a research station that existed between conventional dimensions. Here, the laws of physics were more of a gentle suggestion than an absolute rule. Kira Jung had spent the last 6 months requisitioning components, exploiting every connection she'd made during her investigation. The probe she was building was unlike anything in galactic exploration history, a technological chimera that broke every standard of conventional research protocols. "You're playing with fire," Dr. Ilara Voss muttered, her cybernetic eye scanning the probe's intricate circuitry. A renegade quantum physicist who had been exiled from 3 different research collectives, Ilara was the only scientist mad enough to help Kira. The probe's core was a quantum entanglement matrix that defied standard communication protocols. Traditional sensors would be useless at the human border, something Kira had learned from her fragmented research. This device needed to be different, adaptive, alive in ways most machines were not. "Quantum resonance stabilizers," Kira explained, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. Traditional sensors collapse when they approach the border. This uses a multi-dimensional scanning approach that can maintain coherence across different reality states. Ilara's cybernetic eye whirred, analyzing each component. "You're building a ghost," she said quietly. "Something that can exist and not exist simultaneously." The probe's exterior was a marvel of metamaterial engineering. Adaptive camouflage that could shift between electromagnetic spectrums, quantum encryption that would make it invisible to conventional tracking systems, and a neural network core that could make independent decisions faster than any organic intelligence. Most impressive was the communication system. Traditional quantum communication relied on entangled particles that could transmit information instantaneously. Kira's design went further, a communication matrix that could potentially transmit information across dimensional boundaries. "The data crystal from the Trilaxian diplomat," Kira muttered, pulling out the small device she'd retrieved from the museum, "contained fragments of something. Computational patterns that don't match any known communication protocol." Ilara leaned closer. The crystal seemed to pulse with an internal light that shouldn't exist. "It's not just data," she whispered. "It's a message asterisk." They integrated the crystal's computational matrix into the probe's core. Something changed. The device seemed to breathe, not literally, but in a way that suggested a form of consciousness beyond traditional understanding. "Launch parameters," the facility's AI asked. Kira hesitated. This was the point of no return. The human border was more than a geographical limitation. Every previous expedition had found something that drove crews mad, caused navigation systems to collapse, or simply disappeared. No transmissions, no wreckage, nothing. "Quantum trajectory," Kira specified. "Non-linear approach. Maximum adaptive protocols." The launch bay was a cathedral of scientific possibility. Quantum stabilization fields hummed. Dimensional barriers shimmered. The probe looked almost alive, a metallic organism packed with technologies that pushed the boundaries of known science. "One chance," Ilara warned. "If this fails, you'll never get another opportunity." The launch sequence began. No dramatic countdown, no heroic music, just the quiet hum of impossible technology preparing to cross a boundary that no one had successfully breached. As the probe launched, something strange happened. For a millisecond, the facility's sensors picked up a signal, not from the probe, not from any known source. Something was watching and it was waiting. The quantum communication nexus was designed to handle the most complex transmissions in galactic history. Massive data collectors, dimensional stabilization fields, and quantum decryption systems that could parse information from the edges of known reality. But nothing in its design could have prepared it for what came from Kira Jung's probe. 17 minutes and 42 seconds. That's how long the transmission lasted. Dr. Ilara Voss watched in horror as the data streams began to collapse. What started as a pristine scientific endeavor transformed into something that defied every known law of information transfer. The first layer of transmission was mathematical. Perfect, elegant equations that seemed to breathe with their own intelligence. Quantum algorithms that didn't just describe reality. They seemed to negotiate with it. Mathematicians who attempted to analyze the equations reported migraines, nosebleeds, and vivid hallucinations of geometries that shouldn't exist. Then came the audio fragments. Snippets of human conversations, but wrong voices that sounded human, but with inflections that no human throat could produce. Conversations about things that made no sense. Discussions of boundaries between realities, negotiations with something that existed beyond comprehension. "The membrane is stabilizing," one fragment said. Another, "Containment protocols are holding. But for how long?" The quantum communications array began to break down. Firewalls collapsed. Redundant systems failed one by one, as if something in the transmission was learning faster than any known computational system. "Shut it down," a technician screamed. But it was too late. The transmission had already infected every system it touched, not with a virus, not with traditional malware. Something else entirely. A form of information that was alive in ways no one could understand. Kira stood transfixed. The holographic displays around her showed impossible data. Mathematical sequences that twisted and transformed, audio waveforms that seemed to breathe, visual fragments that looked like both everything and nothing. One frame caught her attention, a glimpse of something. A landscape, a structure, something that looked like it was both inside and outside of reality itself. Then darkness. Every computational system in the facility crashed simultaneously, not a gradual shutdown. An instantaneous collapse that left nothing but blank screens and smoking circuitry. "What have we done?" Ilara whispered. In the days that followed, something strange happened to everyone who had been present during the transmission. Subtle changes, technicians who reported hearing conversations that hadn't happened, researchers who found themselves thinking in mathematical patterns that shouldn't exist. The quantum communication facility was quarantined. Official reports spoke of a computational anomaly, but those who were there knew something else. They had touched something that was never meant to be touched. The probe was gone. No trace remained of its trajectory. No data point suggested where it had gone or what it had discovered. 17 minutes and 42 seconds of transmission. 17 minutes and 42 seconds that would change everything. Days later, Kira found a single piece of evidence. A fragment of data, encrypted in a way no known system could crack, embedded in the crystal from the Trilaxian diplomat. A set of coordinates that pointed directly to the human border. And something else, a message, fragmented but clear. They're waiting. And we're not ready. The United Human Diplomatic Compound on Nexus Prime was a masterpiece of architectural impossibility. Floating kilometers above the planet's surface, the building seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously, part physical structure, part quantum projection. Security was so intense that most alien diplomats considered a meeting there a trial by fire. Kira Zhang had spent weeks orchestrating this single meeting, pulling every string, calling in every favor, pushing her carefully collected evidence to its absolute limit. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez looked like she had been carved from pure titanium. Her eyes, a startling mix of augmented cybernetic enhancements and natural human intensity, seemed to look through Kira rather than at her. The office defied traditional diplomatic design. No ornate decorations, no displays of cultural artifacts. Just pure, minimalist functionality that suggested something deeper was always happening just beyond perception. "You've been asking dangerous questions," Rodriguez began, her voice devoid of any emotional inflection. Kira spread her collected evidence across the holographic table. Fragments of expedition logs, the quantum communication data from the probe, the encrypted crystal, the bizarre transmission that had driven an entire research facility to quarantine. "I want to know why," Kira said. "Why does every galactic map end at human space? What are you hiding?" A smile crossed the ambassador's face. Not a warm smile. Not a threatening smile. Something else entirely. A smile that suggested multiple layers of understanding that existed beyond human comprehension. "Hiding," Rodriguez repeated. The word seemed to hang in the air, transforming into something more than just a simple sound. "We're not hiding anything. We're asterisk protecting asterisk everything." The holographic displays began to shift, not by any manual control, but as if responding to some unspoken command. Fragments of data danced, star charts, expedition records, quantum computational models that looked more like living organisms than scientific diagrams. "Humanity discovered something," Rodriguez continued. "Something that exists beyond the conventional understanding of reality. Not an alien civilization, not a technological threat. Something fundamental." Kira leaned forward. "Fundamental how?" The ambassador's cybernetic eye flickered. For a moment, Kira saw something else behind those augmented pupils, something that suggested vast, incomprehensible distances. "Imagine," Rodriguez said, A boundary that is not just a geographical limitation. Imagine a membrane between realities, a point where the universe doesn't just end, but asterisk transforms asterisk. A holographic displays showed impossible geometries, landscapes that seemed to breathe, mathematical sequences that looked like living organisms. Your probe, the ambassador said, didn't just cross a border. It asterisk touched asterisk something. Something that has been waiting, watching. Kira's collected evidence began to dissolve. Not burn, not delete, simply asterisk unmake asterisk itself, as if the very information was being reabsorbed into some fundamental reality. We are not explorers, Rodriguez whispered. We are asterisk curators asterisk, guardians of a boundary that must remain undisturbed. For a moment, Kira saw something else. A glimpse of something vast, something that existed between moments, between realities. Some doors, the ambassador said, her voice now sounding like multiple voices speaking simultaneously, are better left closed. The meeting was over. As Kira left the compound, she realized she had learned everything and nothing. The human border was more than a geographical limitation. It was an asterisk choice asterisk. A decision made to protect not just humanity, but potentially everything that existed. And no one was brave enough to ask why. The Archive of Impossible Histories was not a place most researchers knew existed. Hidden in a quantum-folded pocket of space, it contained documentation of events that never officially happened, of civilizations that both existed and did not exist simultaneously. Kira Zhang's investigation had transformed her. The meeting with Ambassador Rodriguez haunted her, filling her with a restless energy that demanded resolution. Here, in this impossible archive, she would find the truth. Holographic displays flickered with fragmented memories, historical records that seemed to contradict themselves, expedition logs that told stories of discoveries so profound they had been systematically erased from every known database. A quantum-locked data crystal caught her attention. Unlike the previous crystals, this one pulsed with an internal light that seemed almost alive. When she touched it, memories flooded her consciousness. Not her own, but something else entirely. Humanity's first true encounter with the boundary hadn't been a moment of exploration. It had been an accident. The memory was fragmented but clear. A deep space exploration mission in 2189. The crew of the U.S. Horizon had been testing experimental quantum navigation systems. Something went wrong. Terribly wrong. Their transmission was a nightmare of mathematical impossibilities. The crew reported seeing something that existed between moments. A landscape that was both everywhere and nowhere. Geometries that defied physical laws. Entities that were not entities, but patterns of existence that could think. The official record showed the mission was lost, classified, forgotten. The truth was something else entirely. When the crew returned, they were changed. Not physically. Something deeper. They understood something fundamental about the universe that no other civilization could comprehend. The boundary was not a physical limitation. It was an asterisk membrane asterisk, a protective layer that separated realities that should never interact. Humanity became the guardians almost by accident. The archive revealed fragments of a larger story, expeditions from other civilizations that had approached the boundary. None had returned unchanged. Some had gone mad. Some had simply disappeared. Some had returned as something that was no longer quite themselves. Humanity developed technologies, computational systems that could understand the boundary. Communication protocols that could negotiate with something that existed beyond conventional reality. They became the firewall of the universe. Another memory surfaced, a meeting of human scientists and diplomats. Not a formal gathering, but a desperate collaboration to understand what they had discovered. We are not protecting ourselves, one scientist had said. We are protecting asterisk everything asterisk. The boundary was a defense mechanism, a way to prevent realities from colliding, from destroying each other. Humanity had become the custodians of a cosmic immune system. Kira understood now why no one was brave enough to ask questions. The truth was too vast, too incomprehensible. The archive showed glimpses of what lay beyond. Not aliens, not a technological threat. Something else. Patterns of existence that could think. Geometries that were alive. Computational systems that existed across multiple realities simultaneously. Humanity's role was not conquest, not exploration, but preservation. As the final fragments of memory faded, Kira realized the weight of the secret. Every civilization looked at the human border and saw a limitation. They didn't understand it was a shield asterisk, a protection not just for humanity, but for everything that existed. The last fragment of the memory was a warning. Some boundaries are not meant to be crossed. Some doors are better left closed. Kira Zhang now understood why the galactic map ended at human space, and why no one was brave enough to ask why. The Galactic Convergence Chamber was silent. Representatives from thousands of civilizations sat frozen, processing the revelation that would change everything they understood about the universe. Kira Zhang stood at the center of the chamber, her presentation complete. The holographic displays still flickered with impossible images, fragments of realities that should never have been seen, glimpses of boundaries that existed between moments of existence. She had done the unthinkable, compiled the evidence, broken through the layers of secrecy, revealed humanity's true role in the cosmic ecosystem. The Trilaxian Grand Consul was the first to speak, its multi-dimensional translator struggling to process the implications. "You're telling us," it said, its voice a combination of subsonic vibrations and translated speech, "that humanity has been protecting the entire known universe from something. Not an alien threat, not a technological invasion, something far more fundamental." The evidence was overwhelming. Centuries of careful documentation, quantum computational models that showed the boundary not as a border, but as a living membrane, a protective layer that prevented realities from colliding, destroying each other in cascading dimensional catastrophes. Aria Velox, the data broker who had first helped Kira, stood at the side of the chamber. Her cybernetic augmentations were working overtime, processing the implications of what had just been revealed. Every expedition that approached the human border, Kira explained, her voice calm and precise, encountered something that fundamentally changed them. Not through violence, not through conquest, but through understanding. The holographic displays showed fragments of those expeditions. Crews that returned changed, not physically altered, but fundamentally different, as if they had seen something that rewrote their entire understanding of existence. Humanity had not chosen this role. They had stumbled into it. An accidental discovery during a deep space exploration mission had revealed something profound. A boundary between realities. A membrane that prevented total cosmic collapse. "We are not explorers," Kira quoted from the archived diplomatic meetings. "We are curators. Guardians." The chamber was filled with a mixture of terror and awe. Every civilization present understood the implications. The human border was not a limitation. It was a shield asterisk, a carefully maintained barrier that prevented total dimensional annihilation. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez, who had been present at Kira's initial confrontation, now stood at the edge of the chamber. Her cybernetic eye flickered, processing the public revelation of a secret kept for centuries. "What lies beyond?" a quantum collaborative representative asked. Kira's response was simple and terrifying, something that should never be fully understood. The presentation included glimpses, mathematical sequences that were alive, geometric patterns that could think, computational systems that existed across multiple realities simultaneously. Not a threat, not an invasion, something fundamental to the nature of existence itself. Humanity had become the immune system of reality. As the implications settled, the chamber transformed. What had been a place of diplomatic tension became something else, a moment of collective understanding. Every civilization present realized that the human border was not something to be feared or challenged, but protected. "We're not asking for recognition," Kira said, her final statement echoing through the chamber. We're asking for understanding. The galactic convergence would never be the same. Outside the chamber, the stars seemed to shift, just for a moment. Just enough to remind everyone that some mysteries are better left unexplored. The galactic map would continue to end at human space, and no one would be brave enough to ask why.